Okay, good morning, friends. My name is Rajashri Arjun. So, before we get started, let me kind of introduce myself. I've got about 17 years of experience in this industry. I work with different organizations in different capacities. For example, I've worked with Ericsson, I've worked with Siemens, I've worked with Usha Martin, I've worked also with companies like Nokia Siemens, etc. So, currently, I'm employed with Ericsson Global Services. But over the last couple of years, I've seen myself more as a mentor, a coach, and this mentoring and coaching has actually encouraged me to take a path of continuous learning. And today, I'm blessed, with having myself accredited with different global certifications like all the P3Ms, the PMP, PGMP, and the PFMPs. In terms of Agile, I also have, the accreditations of Safe Practitioner. I'm also certified SPC and also certified by the PMI as an Agile practitioner. I also, did some study on business analysis, and I have a certification on business analysis from the Project Management Institute. And apart from that, as part of my professional career, I also, did some certifications around Microsoft architectures and some other organizational internal certifications also. So this is pretty much about me. And so let's start with what we are, trying to address today is about the agility in the organizations. Okay. So before we start, I'd like to kind of talk about, the different types of agility that, or rather the different obstacles to, agility the organizations are currently experiencing. So in my professional career, I have worked with different business units using different technologies and different management styles. So the challenges, or at the first glance, the challenges when you see it prima facie, it looks like it is too much to do with. But however, if you do a closer introspection, you will kind of see that, and of course, if you do some kind of an analysis, you'll either see that, it falls into either one of these categories also. So for example, if I talk about teams organized by functional specification, many of you are, CSMs, or you also have done some certifications in and around Agile. So if you have read the Scrum guide, right, from Scrum Alliance, over and over again, guess how many times, you will see this word potentially shippable into that. You'll see it exactly 18 times, okay. However, and we still see in our organizations, terms like design sprint, test sprint, and so on and so forth. So it's actually like, in the name of Agile, you are just in part, doing Agile, but on the background, the waterfall habits are still, residing. And these waterfall habits, they hide risk and until it's, too late to respond back. The other challenges are like teams which are organized by architectural components. So if you see teams, organized by architectural components, it actually reduces your ability to reprioritize, the product capabilities. By the way, if you have any questions, please type it on the chat window. I'll spend some time towards the end to answer the questions. The other obstacle that I've often seen is, the distractions. So typically in a large organization, you will see that lots of, dollars are getting spent in unnecessary task switching. You will find people, particularly, landing themselves on multiple critical paths at the same time, and which actually severely, constrains the total productivity. We also see, reluctance to continuously refine and reprioritize or rescope, right? So again, you'll see, these in the product development companies that new scope discovery commonly kind of, outspaces the velocity. To manage the reality, then the product owners, actually should conduct a kind of a backlog refinement meeting with the teams every sprint. However, the product owner controls the scope by deciding which items will fit in the release projection, and giving the historic trends of velocity, the scope for discovery, and so on and so forth. The other things that often you will see are the technical depth, right? So technical depth often causes production problems and high cost of changes. So way back, years back, there were people were focusing on skills like test-driven development. But however, now with the competitive market in this 21st century, these agile engineering skills are expected, to be a core skill of any agile developer. Then there are other aspects as well, like a lack of commitment to transformation, and of course, cultural is also a major obstacle for embracing organizational agility. So there are other factors, I'm sure. So most of my friends who are with me in the webinar would definitely like to share their experiences. So please share your experiences in the chat window. We can go through that towards the end. But are we only talking about projects? I'm sure we aren't, right? So we human beings, we have actually adapted ourselves with the environment to survive. For example, today if it rains in any part of the world, right, and we have to go out, we need to adapt ourselves, taking an umbrella. But at the same time, we have sought order and the stability, which is opposite of adaptation, isn't it? So in fact, what has happened is, in fact, since the beginning of the 20th century, I would say, the teachings in most of the business schools has been about stability and kind of, hierarchy, right? So that's the model most of the organizations were following. But with the advent of the digital revolution, or if you talk about, the Bitcoin, or you talk about the deregulation of the markets or globalization, we have seen a lot of changes. So the question then arises is, why do the organizations need to become agile? So as I mentioned, right, nowadays most of the organizations across the world are subjected to increasing complexity and turbulence. So which means that in any competitive advantages, then they need to quickly respond fast. New technological advances or discoveries and changes, like for example, what I've mentioned, right? For example, if you see this digital revolution slide, I mean the digital revolution picture over here, which I have just marked, right? So this actually, you would see that, what happens in the 60 seconds leaving the internet. For example, if you see Facebook, right? Facebook was created way back in the year 2004. In 2006, it had about 100 million users. At the end of 2013 or 14, it reached about 1.2 billion users worldwide. Today, what is the stock value of Facebook? It's close to almost 300 billion US dollars, right? Look at Twitter, right? Twitter was created sometime way back March 2006 or 2007, if I'm not sure. Okay, but in 1 year, in a span of 1 year, 5,000 tweets were being posted per day, right? Then in a span of 10 years, 6,000 tweets were posted every second. And today, the scenario is we have 500 million tweets per day, right? I mean, we can talk of, lots of examples. We can talk of Instagram, right? Instagram, when they started off, they had almost 100 million users. And eventually it was, got by Facebook by almost 1 billion US dollars. So these are, the realities, and it's something that, we got to live with that. I mean, and hence, we need agility in our organizations. Now, often, because of, interacting with lot of colleagues, lot of friends, and, lot of acquaintances, I often see there is always an overlap between, or a confusion about what is project agility and what is organizational agility in place. Okay. So for me, or rather what I perceive is project agility is all about, the different processes we have in place, the different tools and techniques, things like that. we are going to use it as part of our projects, right? So these tools and techniques can be, some engineering practices like, as I mentioned, test-driven development or continuous integration or continuous development, right? Or some practices from extreme programming. However, organizational agility is more to do about the culture, right? And both these kind of go hand in hand. You might, in an organization, two things play a very important role. One is the processes that you have in place, and the second is the culture. You might have, great processes, right? You might have great processes, but if you don't have the culture, things will not fall in place. On the other hand, you might have a great culture, but if you don't have the right processes, yet, things are going to fall apart. So the message that I want to, present here is that agility is not only about projects, it is also, if we want to see an organization, scaling up their agile practices, it means the organization has to have the right culture. Now, the culture, what the question is, what is the right culture? Culture is, the right to, the culture is about, allowing my people to experiment, allowing my people to, handle the uncertainties, allowing my people to fail but fail fast, and so on and so forth. For example, in the safe standards, right, we have some concept of built-in instability. So, a built-in instability, it means that, I'm empowering my teams, I'm empowering my colleagues that take decisions. I'm decentralizing decisions. So that's a change, and that's, a culture that needs to be there in the organization. So some of the best practices that we can, or some basic organizational agility principles that we can think of are what you see in this slide deck at this point of time, right? So you will see basically, things like uh, responsiveness. So it's in terms of, embracing changes. Okay. So embracing changes, seeing a change as an opportunity, rather than as a threat. Okay. Then, team leadership, building network relationships among stakeholders. So it's more to do away with hierarchies and kind of, building relationships and networking amongst your stakeholders. Empowering people, engaging people, motivation, trust. These are also very fundamental things that are required. Now, empowerment, engagement, delegation, motivation, trust. I mean, who has not heard these words, right? We hear these, words repeated by any manager or any executive. But the reality is, how many have applied it? In very large organizations, it just means that you are expected to handle everything that is shown to you. And the irony is that you are supposed to handle it with a smile in your face. In terms of the other practices or the other principles is, about the simplicity. So the key for any agile organization is basically to, install simple systems, according to me, but change the way, people think about the performance, not in terms of, targets, but in terms of outcome. So it's more about, you know, uh, delivering values rather than, delivering only outputs. So as a principle or as a culture, we need to, accept mistakes from the leadership perspective. We need to learn from the results, whether it's, good or bad. And of course, we have to have the courage to change a decision if it is not showing any kind of expected results. So you will often see in in the organizations, they have these annual strategic meets, and these strategic objectives are, reviewed at the end of every year. So it makes sense to review the strategic objectives at least, once in a quarter and see, are we still aligned with this strategy? Does those strategic objectives still make sense to us, right? So do we need to make adjustments, right? If we need to make adjustments, what are those adjustments we need to make, and so on and so forth. In terms of evolution and leadership, so the managers and leaders, right, they need to commit to the resources necessary to achieve the objectives and Finally, they should have some measures of success so that they can show the progress towards the objectives, and so that the teams also stay motivated, and they can also assess the need for the realignment of it. The managers and leaders also need to be you know need to know how to learn. So they must you know believe in lifelong learning and embrace learning as a new culture. So these are the pretty much the things I wanted to talk about. So I've kept about 10 minutes of time to see if we have any questions. So let me pause here and see what questions we have in the chat.